Welcome to Campfire Horror Tales. Tonight, the fire burns brighter. Because these are not just stories. They're real Halloween horror stories told by those who survived the night and those who never came back. So sit close, keep your lights low, and remember, some tales don't end when the fire goes out. These are 6 true Halloween horror stories. I grew up in a small town tucked between 2 ridges of endless pine forest. Folks around here didn't talk much, but every Halloween night, we all noticed the same thing. The woods behind town would start to glow. Faint orange lights, like floating lanterns, weaving slowly between the trees. My brother Caleb was the first to call them the forest souls. He used to joke that they were trick-or-treaters who got lost years ago and never found their way back. But that Halloween when I was 12, he wasn't joking. He told me he was going to follow them. It was cold that night. The kind of still cold that makes your breath hang in the air like smoke. Our mom was working the late shift at the diner, and Caleb had that look, the restless, defiant one that meant he was going to do something stupid no matter what I said. I remember watching from the back porch as he stepped off into the tree line with just a flashlight and a grin. "Don't wait up," he called. The trees swallowed him whole. He never came back. The search lasted a week. Police, volunteers, dogs, nothing. No footprints, no clothes, no signs of struggle. Just silence. Eventually, everyone stopped talking about it. But every Halloween after that, those lanterns still appeared. Always in the same direction, always deeper in the woods. By the time I turned 23, I'd moved to another town. Tried to forget. But forgetting doesn't work when your nightmares glow orange. Every year on October 31st, I'd wake up at 3 a.m. to that same faint light flickering through my window, even miles away. This year, I went back. The town hadn't changed. Same rusted "Welcome to Pine Hollow" sign, same diner, same empty house that still had our family name on the mailbox. I told myself I just wanted closure. But the truth is, I wanted to see him again. Or at least something. By sunset, I parked near the tree line. The air smelled of wet leaves and distant smoke. And then, right as the sky turned black, the first light appeared. It hovered low, maybe 20 feet away. Then another flickered on behind it. Then 2 more. Slowly, they began to drift deeper between the trees, like fireflies moving in formation. My heart was hammering, but I stepped after them. The forest floor was soft, muffled. The deeper I went, the quieter the world became. No wind, no crickets, just the sound of my own breathing. The lanterns led me to a clearing I didn't remember. It was circular, perfectly so, as if carved out intentionally. In the center stood a dead tree, huge and hollowed out, its trunk split open like a mouth. Inside the hollow, I saw something move. At first, I thought it was smoke. But then it shifted, and I saw a face. Caleb. He looked almost the same. Older, thinner maybe, but his eyes, they glowed faintly with that same orange light. His hands were trembling as he held one of the lanterns close to his chest. The flame inside it didn't flicker. It pulsed like a heartbeat. "Caleb," I whispered. He smiled, not the way he used to. It was wrong, stretched too far. "You came back," he said, his voice dry, hollow. "It's been waiting." Before I could ask what he meant, I felt it, a warmth at my feet. The ground around me began to glow, veins of orange light spreading outward from the soil like roots. From those glowing lines, other shapes began to rise. Outlines of people, hundreds of them, each holding a lantern. Some were children, some were adults. All were pale and still, their eyes dimly burning like candles. They stood in a circle, facing me. Caleb lifted his lantern higher, and the others mimicked him in unison. "The forest remembers who comes looking," he said softly. "It doesn't let them leave empty-handed." I turned to run, but the woods had changed. Every path now looked the same. No direction, no sky. Only more glowing figures between endless trunks. Their lanterns swayed as they followed. The air grew thick, almost syrupy, and my lungs burned. Then, one by one, the lights began to go out. When I woke, it was morning. I was lying on the edge of town, near the same tree line I'd entered hours ago. My phone was dead. My clothes were damp with dew. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed it all. But when I looked down, I saw what I was holding, a lantern. Small, old-fashioned, the glass fogged from inside. I tried to open it, but the latch was sealed. Through the murk, I saw movement, faint like smoke swirling underwater. When I tilted it toward the light, I realized it wasn't smoke at all. It was a face, Caleb's. His mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. I took the lantern that day to the lake behind our house, the same place where we used to fish as kids. I thought maybe I could sink it, and whatever was trapped inside. But as soon as I touched the water's surface, the lantern's flame flared bright, blindingly bright. Now, at night, I see it again, far out in the trees, swaying slowly, as if waiting. And every Halloween since, one more light joins it. Working the night shift at Spooky Town Costumes sounded like the easiest job in the world. Minimum wage, empty aisles, free snacks from the break room. I thought I'd just scroll my phone till sunrise, maybe scare off a raccoon or two. But there's something no one tells you about those pop-up Halloween stores that take over empty buildings every fall. They never really feel empty. Even when you're alone, you can tell you're standing in a place that shouldn't be alive anymore. The store used to be an old Toys R Us. The lights flickered in long, buzzing rows, and the air smelled faintly of plastic and dust. At night, it felt too big. Aisles stretching farther than they should. Shadows pooling in corners that didn't exist during the day. I started 2 weeks before Halloween. My shift ran from midnight to 6, and the only rule my manager gave me was simple. Don't mess with the mannequins. He laughed when he said it, but his eyes didn't match his tone. The first few nights were boring. I walked the floor, checked locks, stocked shelves. Every now and then, I'd hear the plastic animatronics go off by themselves. Motion sensors tripped by the air conditioning, I figured. One night, around 2 a.m., I walked past the mask aisle and noticed something odd. A clown mask that had been on the top shelf was lying on the floor. When I picked it up, the plastic was warm, as if someone had been holding it. I put it back and moved on. An hour later, the clown mask was gone again. I thought maybe another employee had been messing with me. But when I checked the cameras, I froze. The timestamp showed 2:47 a.m. Empty aisles, nothing moving, until suddenly, the mask lifted off the hook on its own and dropped to the floor. No hand, no shadow, just gravity deciding to stop working. The next night, I asked my manager about it. He just stared at me for a few seconds and said quietly, "If something falls, leave it." That's when I started noticing the mannequins. They weren't ordinary ones. They had those cheap rubber heads you could change out depending on the costume. Witches, zombies, skeletons. But sometimes, when I walked past them, I could swear their heads were turned a little too far to one side. Or their hands had shifted an inch closer together. At first, I convinced myself I was tired. But one night, as I was doing inventory, I caught my reflection in a mirror and saw a mannequin standing right behind me. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back at the mirror, it was gone from there too. Halloween week hit, and the manager quit without warning. A handwritten note taped to the counter read, "Keys in drawer. Lock up when you can." So it was just me that night. At midnight, I started my rounds. The store felt different, heavier. The air buzzed with static like a thunderstorm waiting to break. Half the animatronics were still plugged in, their heads twitching and jaws clicking. I walked past a vampire, a scarecrow, a skeleton bride, and then stopped. One of the mannequins was wearing my uniform. Same black polo, same name tag. Derek. The face on it wasn't one of ours, though. It was blank, smooth plastic, like someone had wiped it clean. I thought maybe another employee had set it up as a prank before quitting. But as I stepped closer, I saw something glinting behind the blank mask. A pair of human eyes, glassy and unfocused. They blinked. I stumbled back, nearly knocking over a rack of costumes. My flashlight flickered, and in that instant of darkness, I heard soft footsteps, dozens of them, moving across the tile. When the light came back, every mannequin had turned toward me. Some still wore masks, others had faces half torn off. But they all leaned slightly forward, like they were listening. I bolted for the front door. Fumbling with my keys, the locks wouldn't turn. Behind me, I heard the shuffle of plastic feet on tile, slow and steady. Then one of them spoke. "You drop this." It was a woman's voice, distant, hollow. When I turned, the mannequin in my uniform was holding something out toward me. My name tag. It wasn't mine, though. The photo showed someone else. Same face, same eyes. But the date printed at the bottom said October 31st, 2022. 1 year earlier. I ran. I didn't even think. I slammed open the emergency exit and didn't stop until I was halfway across the parking lot. When I turned back, the lights inside the store were flickering on and off, like someone was walking down the aisles, turning them in sequence. The next morning, I called corporate to quit, but the number was disconnected. Out of curiosity, or maybe stupidity, I drove by that night. The store was closed, dark, empty. But through the window, I could still see them. The mannequins. They were all lined up at the front, shoulder to shoulder, facing the glass, every one of them wearing a Spooky Town costumes uniform. And right in the middle stood the one with my name tag. That was 3 years ago. The store's gone now, replaced by a Dollar Tree. But every October, the Help Wanted sign goes up again. Different name, same building. And if you walk past late enough at night, you can still see the lights flicker inside. They say it's just the wiring, but I know what it is. It's the night shift, and it's always hiring. Every Halloween night, my dad and I used to tune in to station 103.6 FM, the Hollow Hour. It was this local radio show that only played once a year from 10 p.m. to midnight. The host called himself the Storyteller. No one knew who he was, but his voice, deep, calm, and a little too close to the mic, became part of our family tradition. We'd turn off all the lights, carve our pumpkins, and listen. The stories were always weird, some local legends, some confessions, sometimes even live callers who swore they'd seen ghosts that same night. It was fun, spooky, harmless, until last year. Dad had passed away that spring, so it was my first Halloween alone. The house felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that hums in your ears. I found his old radio on a shelf in the garage, the kind with a dial that crackled when you turned it. I wiped the dust off, plugged it in, and waited for 10 o'clock. At exactly 10:01, the signal hissed to life. Good evening, listeners. You've tuned in to the Hollow Hour, where every story is true, whether you believe it or not. It was the same voice, calm, smiling somehow through static. He started with a familiar format, a story about an old farmhouse, a missing girl, something about jack-o'-lanterns glowing on their own. But halfway through, something changed. The sound warped, the music faded out, and I swear I heard my name. And our next story takes place right here in Cedar Hill, at a house on Pine Grove Road. A young man named Michael. That's my name. And Pine Grove Road, that's my street. At first, I laughed. I figured it was a coincidence, some Halloween trick. But as he continued, my chest tightened. Michael is home alone tonight. His father used to listen to this very broadcast, the same radio, in fact. He's sitting in the dark right now, pretending he's not afraid. I froze. The hair on my neck lifted. The host's tone was softer now, almost whispering. He thinks he's the only one listening. But he's wrong. There was a pause, long enough for me to hear my own breathing. Then a faint tap, tap, tap came through the speakers. It didn't sound like part of the show. It sounded like someone tapping the microphone or the window. I turned on the lamp beside me. The curtains moved slightly, like someone had brushed past them. I tried switching the dial, but every station was static. I unplugged the radio. It kept playing. You shouldn't have turned the light on, Michael. They can see you now. My stomach dropped. I checked the door. Locked. Windows locked. Still, the tapping came again. This time from the kitchen. Slow, deliberate. I grabbed a flashlight and moved through the house. The radio followed me. I don't mean the sound carried. I mean it was following. No matter which room I entered, it played like there was a speaker right beside me. He's looking for the source, the voice said. But the source is looking back. I shouted, "Who are you?" The answer came immediately. You know who I am. I told stories with your father. My throat went dry. My dad used to call into the show when I was a kid. He'd share old Campfire Tales from his childhood. The host always called him Mike Sr. He told me about you. The voice continued. He said you'd be listening one day. Something crashed in the living room. The sound of glass shattering. I ran back, but the room was empty. The only thing on the floor was the picture frame of me and Dad, the glass spider-webbed, the photo face down. When I picked it up, the radio's tone changed. There was no more background hiss, no music, just breathing. Then, very softly, "Smile for me, Michael." A flicker of light reflected in the glass of the broken frame. Behind me. I turned. The hallway was dark except for a single glow. A silhouette stood there, tall, blurry, lit by an orange pulse like a dying ember. It was holding something. A microphone. I backed away, tripping over the cord of the lamp. When I hit the floor, the radio's volume spiked so loud it hurt. And now, dear listeners, our story comes to an end. But remember, a broadcast only ends when the signal dies. I yanked the plug from the wall again. The room went black. For a second, nothing. Then, the dial on the unplugged radio slowly turned by itself. Good night, Michael. I woke up on the couch at dawn, radio silent beside me. I convinced myself it was a dream brought on by grief and exhaustion. But when I walked outside, my neighbor, Mrs. Keller, was standing by her mailbox, looking pale. "Rough night?" she asked. I nodded. She hesitated, then said, "I heard your dad's radio playing again." It was nice hearing his voice. I froze. My dad's voice? She nodded. Yeah. I could hear him talking through the window. Thought you had an old recording. I didn't answer. That night, I locked the radio in a box and buried it behind the shed. I told myself that would be the end of it. But this morning, October 31st, when I woke up, there was a voicemail on my phone. No number, just static for 30 seconds, and then a voice whispering, "This is the Hollow Hour. Our next story begins where the last one ended. It's playing again tonight. And this time, it's not just my name he's saying. He's saying yours too." My uncle worked as a building inspector for the state of Oregon for almost 30 years. He was the kind of man who didn't scare easily. He'd seen houses collapse, burned out motels, flooded basements filled with black mold. But before he died, he told me about one property he wished he'd never entered. He called it the house that carved itself. It was late October, the week before Halloween, when the call came in. A family had just moved into an old Victorian house outside a small town called Deerbrook. The place had been on the market for decades, and somehow no one stayed there long. The new owners wanted it inspected before final renovations. Something about strange noises inside the walls. Uncle Dave drove out there early in the morning. He said the road twisted through dense forest, and when the trees finally broke, there it was. A tall, gray structure leaning slightly, like it was bowing toward the ground. The front porch was lined with wooden angels, each carved with faces too human, their eyes hollow and sad. The husband, Greg, met him at the door, pale and tired. He said they'd been hearing scraping noises at night, like someone carving wood from inside the walls. The wife refused to stay in the house, and their 2 kids were sleeping in the car. Dave chalked it up to raccoons or settling beams. But as soon as he stepped inside, he said the air changed, thick, dry, like breathing in sawdust. The interior was stunning in a disturbing way. Every wall had ornate patterns carved directly into the wood. Swirls, faces, flowers, even tiny figures of people. None of it matched the house's age. Some looked centuries old, others freshly cut. He touched one of the carvings. The wood was warm. He took notes, snapped photos, checked for structural issues. The deeper he went, the more wrong things felt. The halls seemed longer each time he walked through them. He'd passed the same door twice without realizing it. And every so often, he'd hear the faint scrape. Scrape. Scrape, like a chisel on wood, coming from somewhere behind the walls. He followed the sound to the basement. The stairs creaked under his boots, dust floating in the narrow beam of his flashlight. The air down there was colder, wet, but with that same wooden smell. At the bottom of the stairs was a large wall covered entirely in carvings of faces. Hundreds of them. Some peaceful, some screaming, some unfinished. And one, at the very bottom, was moving. He swore he saw its eyes blink. That's when the scraping started again, louder now, right behind him. He turned the flashlight, and for a moment, he thought he saw a hand, not human, but wooden, jointed and stiff, pulling itself out of the wall like a marionette without string. He ran. He told Greg to get his family and leave immediately. But Greg just laughed, a tired, hollow laugh, and said, "We can't. It won't let us." Dave demanded the keys, but Greg refused, saying, "It needs new shapes. It's not finished." Dave left that night, terrified. He filed a formal safety report, marked the property condemned until further notice. The next day, when he returned with local authorities, the family was gone. No sign of them. But something had changed. Every wall now had new carvings. 4 of them. A man, a woman, 2 children. For months afterward, Dave couldn't sleep. He said he could still hear that scraping in his dreams. Sometimes he'd wake to find thin curls of wood on his bed sheets, like shavings from a carving knife. He quit the inspection job soon after. The state archived the report, but I've read it. I found it in his old files after he passed. There's a photo attached. It's blurry, grainy, but you can still make it out. A long hallway, walls covered in faces. In the center, carved into a door frame, is his own. I thought maybe he faked it. Maybe the trauma made him imagine things. Until I saw the news last week. A couple from Portland bought that same property. They started posting renovation videos online, talking about restoring its historic charm. The videos got popular fast, millions of views. Everyone loved the craftsmanship of the carvings on the walls. In the last video, the husband laughs about a strange coincidence. We found these initials carved into the main hallway. Looks like DM, 1987. Guess the old inspector left his mark. That was my uncle's name. Dave Monroe. I commented on their video, warning them about the stories, but it got deleted within minutes. Then, a day later, their account vanished. No trace. Curiosity got the better of me. I drove to Deerbrook myself. The road still twists through the same woods. But when I reached the clearing, the house wasn't gray anymore. Someone had painted it the color of fresh cedar, the porch gleaming like it had been sanded just yesterday. The angels were gone. I walked up to the door and knocked. No answer. But I heard something. Faint. Rhythmic. Scrape, scrape, scrape. It was coming from inside the walls. I pressed my ear to the door, and I swear I heard breathing. A whispering voice through the grain of the wood. It needs more faces. I stepped back, heart pounding, ready to leave. But just before I turned away, I noticed something carved into the doorframe. Freshly done, edges still sharp. 3 letters. My initials. I never told anyone else. I can't prove what happened. The house still stands there, waiting, growing. And sometimes, when I walk past my apartment walls at night, I swear I hear that same quiet scraping, slowly tracing a new pattern in the dark. My grandmother used to tell me that every town has a monster dressed like kindness. For us, that monster was the Candyman of Hollow Street. She told the story every Halloween when I was a kid. How he'd walk the old neighborhood with a smile and a wicker basket, giving out homemade candies wrapped in gold foil. Nobody knew where he lived. Nobody ever saw him during the day. Only on Halloween night. The candies were special, she said, soft, pale, shaped like tiny pumpkins. They tasted like sugar and smoke. And if you ate one, you'd never be hungry again. Most people thought it was just a scare story to keep kids from taking sweets from strangers. But I grew up in Hollow Street. And I know it wasn't just a story. When I was 12, my friend Tyler dared me to go trick-or-treating past the end of the street. The part where the road stopped being asphalt and turned to dirt. Past the burned-out houses, the keep-out signs, the place people said used to be a candy factory. We filled our bags half full, then reached the dead end around 10 p.m. That's when we saw the glow. Not from a porch light. It was from him. He stood at the bend of the road under a broken street lamp, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and a dark coat that brushed the ground. His basket shimmered faintly in the orange light, and the air smelled like caramel, sweet and burnt. He smiled when he saw us, slow and patient, like he'd been expecting company. "Happy Halloween, boys," he said. Voice warm but strange, like someone who'd forgotten how to use words. "Would you like something sweet?" Tyler laughed and held out his bag. "Sure, man." The candy man dropped a small wrapped piece inside, shiny gold foil, sealed tight. He did the same for me, then tipped his hat. "Now remember," he said, "eat it before midnight, or it'll eat you." He turned and walked down the dirt path that led behind the old factory. His footsteps didn't crunch. They clicked like wood tapping stone. When we got home, Tyler dared me to unwrap it. The candy looked like white sugar glass, shaped like a pumpkin with a tiny smile. It smelled amazing. We both laughed, tossed them in our mouths, and went to bed. By morning, Tyler was gone. At first, everyone thought he'd run away. But the police found his front door locked from the inside, his window wide open, and his bag of candy spilled across the floor. Every piece melted into a sticky amber syrup. The only thing left untouched was one candy, still in gold foil. Years went by. Hollow Street emptied out after the factory burned down again. Yes, again. And people stopped talking about the Candyman. But I never forgot. When I was 23, I came back to clean out my grandmother's house after she passed. It was Halloween night. The street was dead quiet, half the houses boarded up, leaves blowing through the cracks. Around 10, I heard something outside. Soft footsteps on gravel. Through the window, I saw a faint orange glow. A man in a long coat was walking down the street, basket in hand. The same hat. The same slow, patient gait. I froze. He stopped right in front of the gate and looked up. I couldn't see his face. Only the reflection of the street light gleaming in the curve of his smile. Then he raised his hand, holding something between his fingers. A gold-wrapped candy. I backed away from the window, heart pounding. The doorbell rang, once, twice, 3 times. Each chime lower than the last, like it was sinking into the floorboards. I didn't answer, but when I finally dared to look outside again, he was gone. Only a small box sat on the porch. Inside were a dozen gold candies and a note written in perfect cursive. For the sweetest children. Always hungry, never full. I threw the box away that night, burned it in the fireplace, watched the wrappers curl and melt into black ash. But when I woke the next morning, the ashes were gone, and on the kitchen counter, one candy sat waiting. Perfectly wrapped. I tried to move away, to forget it. But every Halloween, I still get a delivery. No return address, no markings, just a small gold box. Last year, I finally called the police. They opened the package and took one of the candies for testing. The officer called me 2 days later, voice shaking. He said the candy wasn't sugar, it was wax, mixed with something organic, something they couldn't identify. When I asked what that meant, he said quietly, "It looks like it was molded around teeth." I didn't sleep for days. This year, I moved again, 3 states away. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. But this morning, when I opened my door, there it was, a small parcel wrapped in gold paper, sitting on the welcome mat. Inside, a single candy and a note. Welcome home. They say Hollow Street doesn't exist anymore, that it was demolished, erased from maps, renamed decades ago. But on some nights, when the wind blows just right, people claim to smell something sweet, burnt sugar and smoke drifting through the air. If you follow it long enough, they say, you'll find a man in a dark coat waiting at the corner with a basket. And if you're lucky, he'll offer you something sweet. Just remember, eat it before midnight, or it'll eat you. A few years ago, there was this online challenge going around on the dark web called the Reflection Ritual. Most people thought it was just another creepypasta. Some edgy dare to film yourself at 3:33 a.m. in front of a mirror while holding a candle. But the rumor was that if your reflection didn't move exactly when you did, you were marked. And if you watched the recording afterward, you'd see something standing behind you. My roommate Ben was obsessed with this kind of thing. He had a whole channel where he tried out cursed games, elevator rituals, ghost boxes, mirror dares. Most of them were fake, but this one got under his skin. He said it started with a private invite link sent through an encrypted forum. The page had no title, just a black background and a single line of text. Record yourself for 3 minutes at 3:33 a.m. Hold a flame between you and your reflection. If it flickers left, end the video immediately. He decided to try it on Halloween night for content. I told him not to, not because I believed the story, but because every one of these stunts always ended with him breaking something or nearly burning down the apartment. He laughed it off. At exactly 3:30 a.m., he set up his camera facing the bathroom mirror. He lit a single candle, turned off the lights, and hit record. I watched from the hallway, rolling my eyes. For 2 minutes, nothing happened. He stood there, staring into the mirror, breathing slow and steady. Then, Right before 3:33, the flame bent sharply to the left. Ben froze. The reflection didn't. For a split second, his reflection was still moving, smiling while he wasn't. Then the candle went out. He cursed, turned on the light, and laughed nervously. "Probably a draft," he said. But when he checked the camera, the video file was gone. The folder was empty, except for one new file titled Replay. It was shorter, about 30 seconds. No sound. Just Ben standing in front of the mirror, unmoving except for his reflection, which turned its head slowly, directly toward the camera. I told him to delete it. He tried, but every time he did, it came back, sometimes with a new name. Replay 1, Replay 2, Replay 3. He finally gave up and shut the laptop. That's when we heard the whispering. It was faint, coming from the bathroom. At first, I thought it was the pipes. But when Ben leaned in, the voice got louder, distorted, metallic. It sounded like his own voice, repeating the words he said during the ritual. We both backed away. The bathroom light flickered on and off by itself. Then the camera, which was still pointed at the mirror, started recording again. The red light blinked, even though it wasn't plugged in. On the display screen, there was Ben's reflection, only Ben wasn't standing in front of it anymore. He panicked, slammed the door, and told me to grab his laptop so we could delete the files. But when I opened it, the desktop was completely black, except for a new message. "The flame chose you." I shut the lid, heart pounding. From behind the door, we heard a muffled voice, Ben's, calling for help. Except he was standing right next to me. When we opened the door, the bathroom was empty. The mirror was fogged over, dripping water onto the floor. In the center of the fog, drawn by a finger, were 3 words. "Check the upload." We ran to his room, pulled up the site. The counter now said 73. Ben's face went pale. I didn't upload anything. I told him to disconnect the Wi-Fi, but before he could, the screen refreshed. A new video thumbnail appeared. His bathroom, his mirror. Title: Reflection Accepted. Upload time: 3:36 a.m. The still frame showed Ben's reflection smiling. But if you looked closely, the real Ben wasn't in the shot at all. He yanked the Ethernet cord out of the wall. The site went black. Then his laptop fan kicked on, loud, whirring. The screen lit up again. The counter number flickered once more. 74. Ben disappeared 2 nights later. No note, no signs of a struggle. His phone was left on the counter, still recording a dark, silent video. Police said he probably ran away, but I knew better. When they asked me to help pack up his things, I found his camera, the same one from that night. The battery was dead, but the SD card was still inside. When I played it, it showed an empty bathroom. The mirror was clean, spotless. Then, after 20 seconds, the reflection started to move on its own. Ben's face leaned into frame, smiling, whispering something I couldn't quite hear. When I turned up the volume, I caught 3 words. "You're next, Watcher." I smashed the camera, deleted every file, and got rid of the laptop. I even moved across the state. For a while it worked. But a few months ago I was scrolling online and saw a link posted to a new forum. Same format, same black background, same single line of text. Record yourself for 3 minutes at 3:33 a.m. The counter said 1. Out of curiosity, I refreshed. It said 2. Then my phone camera turned on by itself. For a second, I saw my face. And behind me, something smiling through the glass of my window, where there shouldn't have been any reflection at all. Now, when I look in the mirror at night, I don't see my own eyes move anymore. They lag. Just a fraction of a second, enough to know that whatever's looking back isn't me. If you ever find that link, don't click it. Don't watch. Don't record. Don't look too long. Because once your reflection knows your name, it doesn't need the internet to find you.